Transitioning from softball to hardball cricket can be daunting for both players and the volunteers and coaches teaching it. The Metrobank Girls in Cricket Fund, championing the Future Hub on iCoach Cricket, has content dedicated to supporting those who are at the stage of helping their girls team through this transition. That is just one of a host of resources available to support coaching of girls cricket. Find articles and content that could support you by creating your login at icoachcricket.ecb.co.uk. Hello and welcome to the Wisden Women's Cricket Weekly podcast. I'm Katya, Witney, and today I'm joined by Ben Gardner to discuss the latest action in the 100. I also caught up with Lauren Winfield-Hill after her Player of the Match performance in Oval Invincibles' win over London Spirit. And later on in the show, we have Phil Walker's wide-ranging interview with Danni Wyatt on her career, from her beginnings to England women's all-time leading T20I run scorer. Firstly, let's hear from Lauren ahead of the Oval Invincibles' final group game. Lauren, Oval Invincibles beat London Spirit in the London Derby at the weekend to secure second position, currently at the time of recording, in the table. You played a crucial role in that win on Sunday, scoring 61 off 40 in the chase of 121. Talk us through that innings in front of a packed crowd at the Oval.
Long overdue, probably, as a first thing. It was nice, really. I think it was a pretty tough start to the comp for me, runs-wise. But I always felt like I was in a pretty good mental space. Just something wasn't quite clicking. It was nice for it to sort of come together and like at a crucial time really for the team as well. You know, I was pretty determined to make sure that we got through unscathed and saw it through to the end. And it sort of feels like it's the same thing after each game at the minute, and we've got another important game and the derby and all that, but they're all sort of important at this stage in the comp. But it was really pleasing to put in a good performance in front of a packed crowd at the Oval as well. Like it was an awesome day, awesome crowd, beautiful weather, and a great result.
It's really tight in the women's competition this year. This is probably the tightest we've seen it so far. And as you said, it's a packed schedule. It must feel like it's just one thing after the other.
Yeah, we've sort of had we had a quite a steady start with the spacing, and then we've had like a really congested sort of 8 or 9 days, and a little bit less congested at this back end. But yeah, that's the good thing, isn't it, with the 100, is that you sort of can't rest on your laurels for too long, whether it's gone well or not so well. You sort of quickly got to move on to the next game because they come thick and fast. So yeah, it does hit you when you're sort of on that, on the conveyor belt of games and travel and whatnot. But I think that's the really good thing about this comp.
How was the bus up to Nottingham yesterday in 30-degree heat?
Yeah, you know what? We couldn't believe it. We were like, of all the poor weather we've had at the start of the cricket season, we've got the hottest day, and we're stuck on a bus all day. And to be honest, I was like, oh, it's the Midlands from London, shouldn't take long. And then it's like, nah, everything takes long trying to get out of London. So yeah, it was a fairly long day, to be fair, but I'm glad we've sort of come a day early and managed to get the travel and the recovery out from the last game and do a bit of prep at Trent Bridge.
Marizanne Kapp has been in sensational form in the tournament so far. On Sunday, you mentioned she saw you through to the end with 30 off 18 balls, but she also bowled 15 balls, took 1 wicket and conceded only 11 runs. To put into context the form she's in, since that awesome match against Spirit a couple of weeks ago when she scored 47 and took 4 wickets, she scored 75 runs across 3 innings without being dismissed. As a captain, can you explain what it's like to have someone who can do that in your side and just how good she is?
Well, I can't explain how good she is because it's really hard to put into words, to be honest. Me and Megan Shute were talking about it, is that she's the best all-rounder in the world as a full package. I think, Nat Sciver-Brunt is in the same sort of league, but I think what Kappy brings to all facets of the game is honestly just immeasurable. I think for a long time she was known as being such a threat with the new ball, and of late her batting's she could arguably get into any team for either skill, which is just phenomenal, really. It sort of gives you great belief as a team when you've got her in the middle order, she's so composed and calculated in a chase as well. It's almost like we were watching her batting in a couple of innings ago, and it was almost like she's playing like computer games at one point. It's like, where's the field? Okay, right, move, manipulate that, get the boundary. And she's got a brilliant knack of taking risk at the right time. But yeah, it's hard to do. It's hard to put into words. She's obviously fiercely competitive and so determined to win. And I think that's probably, another reason why she's so often not out, because she's so determined to make sure that she completes the job. And with the new ball, she just sets the game up. I don't think there's many in the world that can dismiss Meg Lanning twice in a row in similar fashion, even though she knows it's coming. The wobble ball, the nip backers, is always going to come. But I think she just sets the tone for us. And I think what's been really nice as well is she's a hugely important player for us, and she's really come out of her shell the last couple of years, and started contributing a lot more off the field in meetings, and all those sorts of things that you don't see. But she's certainly, she's a massive player for us, and it's really nice that we sort of get to see the other side of her now.
Is that something that happens more generally, like as you've got more experience and reached the second half of your career? Have you felt more comfortable in team meetings and to contribute in that kind of way?
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot depends on the environment and the team you're in. But I think I guess you get to a point where you've got quite a few different experiences and you can share them. I guess in the first part of your career, you're always questioning your value in terms of, should I speak? Is it, are you the youngster that's sort of like just stay in your box a little bit? But yeah, I think, it's in most teams, if you've got a nice blend of senior players and youngsters, you're in a pretty good spot. And, your confidence sort of grows as you get a bit older and more experienced.
I was thinking about this the other day when a lot of the time we talk about overseas players and in the benefit that they can bring to younger domestic players in the squad. And in terms of the Oval Invincibles, how can you see players like Marizanne Kapp and Shamari Atapatu giving that kind of experience to the younger players in the squad?
Yeah, I think those two players have been really great for that. Another player who probably deserves a lot of recognition in that role has been Megan Shute. I think she's been an awesome addition to our team, and she obviously hasn't taken the field for us, but what she's brought from a playing group perspective off the field and in training, she's taken Lizzie Scott under her wing, the in-swing crew. And, like Lizzie says, I've come away with two variations that I didn't have before, helping her in the nets and teaching her new tricks. So I think that's the beauty of franchise cricket, and that's the great thing when you get really good people that are open to helping each other and passing on that knowledge. And it's obviously different because she has a little bit more time and probably less focus on trying to do her own thing in the space that she and the role that she's playing in our group. But it's still, it's experiences that somebody like Lizzie Scott is going to remember and come back to, and some of the things that she's learned from her. I don't, she wouldn't have the opportunity to do that anywhere else. So I think that's a really cool thing.
One of the other young players in the Oval Invincibles squad, Sophia Smale, who took 2 wickets on Saturday, she was one of the breakout stars of the 2022 100, where she was the Invincibles' leading wicket taker at the age of just 17. How have you seen her development over the course of the last couple of years, and particularly this season?
I just love Shmaili. I think she's just such a wicked person to have in your team. I think she's brave. She wants to be in the big moments. She never backs away from a challenge. If there's a batter that you're desperate to dismiss, she wants to be the one to take that wicket. I think she's learning all the time about the game, and I guess the intricacies of the game, when to adjust your pace up and down, different plans to different players and things like that. I think she's grown a lot in terms of her knowledge and sort of reading the game. And she's always someone is trying to learn, is always trying to tinker, whether it be like arm balls or trying different things. She's just got that like fearless youngster attitude. where she's up for it and she wants to, she wants to be in those big moments, which I think is a very underrated attitude and skill as a youngster, because not everybody wants to. I think when I was a youngster, I probably wanted to hide from those moments. And as I've gotten a bit older, I sort of, they're the moments that you crave and thrive on. But I think to have that at such a young age against some of the best players in the world, is a really good attribute.
Is that something we can put down to the 100 giving these opportunities to players a lot sooner? Obviously, the 100 wasn't about when you were beginning your career, and we mentioned Sophia Smale was only 17 in 2022 when she first played in the 100. So I guess if you're put in those big moments in front of a large crowd from a young age, that's only going to further your kind of want to be involved in them.
Yeah, and I guess you're not overawed by the occasion or who you're bowling at. I think, for quite a few, for years ago, bowling at somebody like Sophie Devine or Elise Perry or Phoebe Litchfield or whoever it is, who are some of the absolute, Perry and Devine are some of the absolute greats of the game, who are so destructive and have been for they're iconic players. It's just sort of what they do, isn't it? And being exposed to bowling at those kind of players is very quickly become the norm for someone who likes Sophia Smale. Whereas I think, in the past, you'd only really be exposed to that in international cricket, and the jump it could probably seem quite daunting. Whereas now, it's a little bit like Capsey's journey in terms of how quickly she sort of went through the 100 and then into international cricket, where you're just not afraid of these players. And I think, that it is massively the beauty of the 100 and franchise cricket to just get that exposure. And I think it stretches your game as well, because you're playing against some of the best players in the world. You know that you have to go toe to toe with them. And I think it stretches your skill quicker, which is why we see so many youngsters now just bursting on the scenes, because that sort of learning period happens really quick.
And it's also worth saying with Sophia Smale that she regularly opens the batting for Western Storm in the Rachel Hay-Ho Flint. But she's coming in as low down as 10 for the Oval Invincibles. So that kind of also shows the difference between the regional stuff and the 100 stuff and the potential that Smale has, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, she was in the nets next to me today at Trent Bridge, and she's a great bat as well. And like I said, we're even Rhiannon McDonald-Gay bats at sort of 9 for us, which is, she is more than capable with the bat as well. But yeah, I guess it does sort of show the difference between the two. And it's also dependent on the teams, how the teams match up and that sort of thing as to where they slot in. But she's certainly more than capable with the bat, and she's improved a lot in the field as well. The catch that she took of Beth Mooney's, the catch, that she took in the first game against Phoenix, her fielding has improved enormous amounts as well. So she's a really exciting package. And she's so ambitious and so passionate, that she's got, the foundations of making a really exciting cricketer.
Well, we'll follow her progress very keenly. Changing the subject a bit, coming up later in the show, we've got Phil's superb interview with Danni Wyatt. In the last couple of years, she's gone past Charlotte Edwards as England's leading T20I run scorer, women's T20I run scorer of all time. And last year, she made her Test match debut in the Ashes. Lauren, you played a lot of your England career with her. What's she like to play with?
You'd have Danni in absolutely every dressing room, because she's such good energy. She's really competitive in her own way, but she's got this lovely sort of like free spirit vibe as well. And I think the biggest shift is like how composed and calm she is at the crease now. Whereas before, I think, there was moments of brilliance, but there was moments of almost franticness as well. Where I think she's sort of in a place now where she's in this sweet spot. She knows exactly what works for her, the sort of mindset she needs to be in. But I think we've spoken a little bit about her before on the podcast, and like the way I would describe Danni Wyatt is she's playing the modern, she played the modern day game now 10 years ago, and it caught up with her. It caught up to her style rather than the other way around. And she's somebody that's fearless regardless of form, regardless of opponents or surfaces or whatever. I don't think there's many players in the world that can come out and play the same brand regardless of all those factors. It's a very difficult thing to do mentally, to just come out and be aggressive regardless of all those things. And she's one in a very few who has the ability to do that. And I think that's what makes her so special, especially in, short format cricket.
And do you have a favourite memory of playing with Danni Wyatt?
Oh, I think when she got that T20 at Canberra in the Ashes, and her celebrations up to her grandfather, and it was just, I think that was probably the start of the beginning of this journey that she's gone on from that moment where she's become a box office player. But yeah, I remember there's a photo of us actually, and I picked her up like a little baby, and big celebrations after she scored that 100. But yeah, it was just phenomenal. And like I said, even all back then, she was playing the way that people are training to play like now.
Yeah, I was thinking about that 100 a little bit earlier on. And earlier in the year, I spoke to Danni Wyatt about how disappointed she'd been not to be picked up in the first edition of the WPL. And since scoring that 100, she scored an awful lot of T20 runs. Do you think that over the last couple of years, in an international standing anyway, she's almost been slightly underrated before the last couple of years?
I think so. There's not many series where she goes without making a match-winning contribution. She can single-handedly win you games of cricket. And in nearly every series that she plays, she'll win you at least one game on her own. And I think, you can't really put a price on that. I do think has potentially been a bit hard done by in that, in terms of the WPL stuff and obviously wanting to get picked up in that, and then hasn't really had the exposure and the opportunities that she would have liked in that competition. I think sometimes as well, people get obsessed with all-rounders. And that's where, I think if you look at some players who are playing in roles that she would play, is that a lot of teams are constantly looking for all-rounders. But I think there's still a place for, if you do your primary skill really well and you're a match winner, then you're a match winner. And she definitely is that sort of box office player that, her best day out is 100 off 60, and not many people can do that. So I do think she hasn't necessarily had the opportunities globally in all these other comps that she maybe deserves.
And I mentioned Wyatt's achievements over the last couple of years, having turned 33 this year. You've spoken before about age in the game and having almost a cricketing age. What do you think Danni Wyatt's cricketing age is?
That's a quote. What's a cricketing age? I just think I think she'd be, I don't know, 25, 26. I think, you've got to think about the age of the game in terms of where the game is played, the way in which it's played now. And 10 years ago, it wasn't played how it's played now. So you almost can't compare the two. I think it's in a situation whereby how long has the game been really competitive and played in the fashion that it is now. And I think, there's probably been 5 or 6 years of that, really. But the other thing is as well, people talk about age all the time and how long will they go for and things like that. Like Danni Wyatt's an absolute jet athlete. She's one of the best fielders. She's, touch wood, she's pretty robust in terms of injuries and stuff. I don't see why, if she wanted to, she couldn't play for another 5 years, if longer, if she wanted to. And also I think there's a massive case for, if you're in your sweet spot and you're playing well, does it really matter what age you are? And I think she's a prime example of that. She's just got better and better as she's got deeper into her career. And I think she'll continue to keep getting better and better for the next few years. And there's no reason why, she can't play some of her best innings in the next 5 years.
Well, we'll look forward to that interview with Phil later in the show, and we'll catch back up with you, Lauren, next week after the 100 has been decided. Ben, we're at a crunch point of the 100. At the time of recording, each side only has one more fixture to play. It's incredibly tight at the top of the table, and only Southern Brave have been eliminated from the competition at the moment, so 7 sides currently still in contention to make the knockouts. Ben, we've mentioned Southern Brave. They're the only side already eliminated from the competition. They're the reigning champions and have been in the final in every edition of the tournament prior to this one. What's gone wrong for them this year to have such a massive turnaround?
Yeah, it's kind of extraordinary, isn't it? And actually, you look at it, and that's kind of why the table's so tight elsewhere. It's not like, the previous 3 seasons, it's kind of looked a bit stretched out because they run away with it each time. So I actually worked out that they lost 5 games across the first 3 editions of the 100. So they lost 1 group game in each of those 3 and then lost the first 2 finals. And then they've lost 5 games this season. So that's as many this season as in the previous 3 combined. And yet, so everyone's kind of been able to take wins off them, but also beat everyone else, has kind of been the case in the previous 3 seasons. And you look at it, and from a personnel point of view, it's hard at first to absolutely nail down what's gone wrong. Like, okay, they've lost Anya Shrubsole. That is a big blow. And I guess you'd also look at Smriti Mandana not being there for the start of the competition, and they replaced her with Charlie Knott, who's not an elite level overseas player. But it's more than just it's more than that, really. It's kind of just that they've just had a bit of a stinker. I think you can plan everything you want, and you could assemble this group of players, and that won't mean much if only Danni Wyatt is getting any runs. Basically, I mean, you look at Bouchier, who you'd think would be a bank given her form for England. She's averaging barely over 15. Mandana, even since she's come in, averaging under 15. Georgia Adams, who was dependable last year with the bat and brilliant with the ball, has not lit the competition up in either discipline. So that's the main thing, really, is that you've got 2 absolute bankers, you'd think, in Boucher and Mandana not getting runs. That's the main thing. But then also, if you look, I guess there is some stuff maybe to say in terms of squad construction. Like, they have tended to have like that kind of like English kind of core at the top of the order, along with Mandana, and have then had a bit of overseas kind of luxury elsewhere. You think of like Maitland Brown last year, who was kind of like a peripheral figure, effectively. She played every game, but batted only, I think, she only made about 30 or 40 runs in the whole comp and only bowled 4 in 4 innings. Like, she was there as like a, and they stormed it despite having that. This season, they've kind of done the same thing with Chloe Trine, who has actually had a good competition, but she's batting at 5. Similarly, like, she's bowling a reasonable amount, but she's only got the 3 wickets. She's not there as a frontline bowler. But you wonder if they need a bit more like proper overseas heft at the top of the order. That's with a deal of hindsight, because she wouldn't have expected, Boucher to go as bad as she has done. And then also they acquired Datani in the draft, and actually a reasonably hefty price point. She's their most expensive uncapped player alongside Georgia Adams, and she's just not clicked yet in the 100 at all. This season it's 30 runs in 5 innings, averaging 7.5, striking 80. But overall in the 100, it's she now played 27 times. She's got 213 runs, an average of just under 12, a strike rate of just under 90. She's gone from London Spirit to Trent Rockets to Southern Brave. She keeps getting these deals, but you wonder if she's one of the ones where they'll look to have a bit of a reset after this year, possibly lose her, and that's where they can maybe look to free up a space to rebuild, I guess. But it is a weird one, because you look at it and you're like, that looks like a decent team on paper, and yet it's just not really clicked, I guess.
Well, yeah, they have had an absolute stinker, and they've got 1 group game left against Welsh Fire, who are table toppers, so it's an opposite ends of the table clash. It's not all been doom and gloom, though. You've been particularly impressed with Lauren Cheetle, you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, she's been good. She's great to watch. I mean, it's an amazing set of numbers she's got. She's going at an economy of 5.2, averaging 16. And when you think actually the big loss was Shrubsole in terms of overall personnel, but she's come on in and done everything you'd want your overseas to do. But it's just a great story, really. She kind of tears into the Australia team as a 17, 18-year-old, and getting into that Australian team at that age, you've got to be something pretty special. So she's playing a few white ball games around the sort of 2017 to 2019. She's as a speedster, but then as a speedster, that takes its toll. She has so many years of injuries. She gets back into the team at the end of last year in the test team, so she's yet to play a white ball game since 2019, but gets in into the test team, and then has a skin cancer scare and has to miss the the end of the Australian season and then the WPL as well. And I think actually Southern Brave deserves some credit for picking her up, because there's not a lot of, there's no international record there to go on, at least recent international record, given she last played before COVID for Australia in white ball cricket, and she was the lowest down of any overseas player picked up in the draft. So to some extent she's a bit of a punt, and that also reflects how Southern Brave have put less stock in getting a brilliant overseas player and more in having that domestic core. But she's absolutely justified that, and you'd expect that they'll look to cling on to her next year, but there also will be a discussion about she'll want, I guess, to move up that price bracket. If she can do that at Southern Brave, great. Maybe she moves up to that price bracket that Datani's in, possibly, or they'll face a battle to keep her if she wants even more money, and she might then think, okay, I'll go back in and see if someone else will pick me up for a bit more. But she's been brilliant. She's been a real highlight for them. The other one that's actually not hard to be impressed by, a 16-year-old who sort of bowls this quite elegant left-arm spin. So Phil said he thought this is Tilly Courtine-Coleman. Phil thinks he sees some Sophie Exon in it. For me, it's Alex Hartley. Like, it's that pirouette after delivery that is very Hartley-esque. I mean, she's not had a brilliant season overall, but gee, there's a lot of potential there. And so I don't think that we don't need to say that Charlotte Edwards is an awful coach now, considering all the success she's had, or that George Adams is a bad captain even. But there will be, I guess, a bit of pressure on those two, and you wonder as well whether not that there'll be any motion by anyone to move Charlotte Edwards aside, but whether this might actually seem like something of a natural stepping off point for her. I don't know. That's what you were saying to me before anyway.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because Charlotte Edwards obviously had that brilliant kind of year last year where she won pretty much everything, or 18 months ago maybe now, where she won the first edition of the WPL, was it, as coach? Almost won or did win the WBBL 100. Vipers did the double in the domestic season, and it's quite hard to top that, obviously. So then everything you come down from that is going to feel like a failure. I think with Southern Brave it's amplified because they've been so bad this season. But Charlotte Edwards obviously has his reputation as the best women's coach in the world, one of the best coaches in the world. And it's interesting to see where she goes from here. Obviously, international jobs, none of them are really open at the minute for her. She didn't take the England job last time when she potentially could have gone for it. It's quite soon after her playing career ended. And you mentioned Lauren Cheadle and Charlie Knott, they're players that are in the Brave side because they're Sydney Sixers players who she coached. And I interviewed her earlier this year, and she talked about wanting to get Charlie Knott over for ages. So there's that other kind of feather to her bow, if you like, that she does coach all these sides around the world, but views Southampton as her home and where she wants to coach, and she brings these players around the world to Southampton. So it's an interesting one both for her and for Vipers/Brave as a side, both based in Southampton, and Vipers Hampshire next year, to see where they go from here, because even as a player they've been all about Charlotte Edwards for a very, very long time now. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes.
You think if she does go, I know you said there's no international job open, but you'd kind of think if you're a smart international team who want to move forward, and if she's keen for that, you almost think you kind of make the job open. You think, well that's the outstanding candidate, we kind of get her in, and we kind of deal with our incumbent later. You've seen examples of that in other sports. I think there's an example in men's football with Liverpool when Jurgen Klopp came inside. It was because he'd just been sacked by Dortmund, and they were like, well that's our guy. So the current guy we got, I think it was Brendan Rodgers, was like, he's not doing that bad, but let's get this guy in because this is the guy. And I wonder if Charlotte Edwards goes, not like, oh, we don't have a vacancy for her, you almost make the vacancy, but that's thinking quite far ahead. But interesting about the other one as well, we haven't mentioned in terms of having not a great season, is Freya Kemp, isn't it? Who there is there's obviously so much promise there, and she is a player who will play a lot more for England, but it hasn't yet quite clicked, has it? And she's a 19-year-old, that's fine, but that just shows how progression isn't always linear. Someone can be hugely talented as she is, and she's had a struggle with injuries as well, which means she's sometimes been in there as a batter, sometimes as an all-rounder, which can't be an easy thing to do to adjust mentality-wise as well. But that's something else that Southern Brave, they do have a brilliantly talented player there, but she's not yet a banker for them in the way that you would want a one of your kind of stars to be, I guess.
Moving on, Ben, what do you make of where the women's competition is at more generally? We're in the fourth year of the 100 now, and we obviously had that initial first boom of expansion almost by accident when COVID happened and the double headers were kind of first floated as an idea, and that's now become basically the USP of the tournament over being 100 balls, not a 20 over tournament. What do you think the pace of that expansion is like now, and where does the women's tournament go from here?
Yeah, it's interesting. Almost because it's so clearly like ahead of the men's competition in what you'd want the 100 to be. You need to be careful you're not like overlooking any flaws or room for improvement that there might be. Obviously it's the men's competition that has struggled most in terms of having those star overseas player names. But and this kind of isn't really a fault of the 100, but the fact that the Asia Cup overlapped with the first few rounds of it means that you did have Mandana turning up a bit late and Shamari Atapati turning up a bit late, and that is a bit of a shame for the competition, especially when it was fighting for oxygen against the test match in that first week. And actually in that first week, I think you were almost thinking about like if it had continued, you were going to write a piece about like where have the close finishes gone in the women's game, and then you had that string in a row where it was was it 2 tied games and a 1-run win in succession or something like that.
For context, the idea for that piece was floated half an hour before the first tight result of the tournament. So.
yeah. So you sort of jinxed it into action. But from that point onwards, I mean, and also the fact that there's been I think a tournament isn't just good because it happens to go to a last ball finish. There's been a lot of games that actually I think have been close kind of a lot of the way through, and then there's been something like a dramatic thing happen and then it's kind of got to a finish. So you look at it as a 20-run win, it's like, okay, that's not that close a game, but actually if you'd follow it through, you'd be like, no, that was competitive and it felt in the balance right up until it wasn't, and then it ended kind of thing. And then also, the crowds are still, it's been a tough summer for, it's always gonna be a tough summer for cricket alongside the Olympics, alongside the men's Euros in football, and with the T20 World Cup, the men's T20 World Cup, meaning that test match overlaps with the first week of it. And this is more anecdotal than having a proper statistical backing, but I feel like there is less of an increase between the women's to the men's crowd, which means that there are more people who are coming for the women's game and then staying for the men's game rather than coming just for the men's game. I feel like that's what's happening. But you said there was a record crowd last week, was there?
Yeah, well, we've talked a little bit about crowds off air, and over the last couple of weeks we've kind of been saying about that the crowds have been quite disappointing overall for this year of the 100, but it is worth separating out the crowds for the men's game and the crowds for the women's game, especially and also separating inside of London and outside of London, because the crowds at the Oval have generally been pretty good, I think we can say. And I think we do tend to judge the women's competition purely on how big the crowds are a lot of the time, which shouldn't be the only measure for development of the competition. But at Old Trafford over the weekend, there was a record women's crowd with 11,600 people for the Northern Derby between Manchester Originals and Northern Superchargers. Record for the game at that ground, should say. And for the men's, it was a good few thousand more, but it wasn't the kind of split. Yeah. It wasn't a record crowd. I think it might have been second or third record, but not an overall record. So that's worth keeping an eye on as well, and considering for the future as like where we measure the tournament and where it's at right now.
In terms of how it develops, the big unknown, as with the 100 in general, but even more with the women's competition, is just what it looks like with private investment, basically. And it's not been talked about nearly enough what the effect could be on the one unmitigated success in the 100 is, which is the women's competition. And again, it's also one of those things that it's easy to pay lip service to before it happens. The ECB can say, yes, we'll make sure that whoever owns the teams, puts as much effort into running their women's sides as their men's sides. And those people, when they're looking to buy those sides, will say, yeah, sure, we'll put loads into the women's as well as into the men's. But I think there will be that fear that that just might not happen. Basically, that they might take over, and when it comes between putting an extra bit of money here or there, where does that end up going? And does it get the same focus as well? Like the thing at the moment is it's the same. It's a level platform if it's not a level pay structure at the moment. But does that level platform still exist when you have so for example, say it's the Knight Riders that take over a team. Like we've seen some of the IPL teams who have had opportunities to buy teams in the Women's Premier League not do that. And so you might question, you know, are they then going to have the same commitment to a women's team in the English competition? And how do we ensure that gets happening, and there's money ring fenced for the expansion of the competition? It's just an unknown. And I think we can talk about, you know, this being a great and exciting season, and it is, and, you know, about the fact that the women's 100 is the jewel in the crown of English domestic cricket at the moment, which it kind of is, I think. But we, like, in terms of how it expands, that just depends on how pro investment plays out, and there are still so many unanswered questions about that we kind of almost have to ask those now, but we can't answer them until a few months' time, I think.
Next up, we've got Danni Wyatt, who took some time out of the 100 to chat to Phil Walker for the new edition of Wisden Cricket Monthly magazine, which is available to order now. Here's part of that fascinating interview.
Were you any good at football? I mean, you know, at that level, could you have maybe pursued that cricket hadn't played?
Yeah, I reckon I could have. A lot of people, like my dad especially, says I could have played for England in football. I was really good.
I'm seeing a kind of tough tackling right midfielder, right winger, you know, box to box.
I wanted to be everywhere.
Yeah.
Honestly,
yeah,
I was so passionate. I just wanted to score goals. I wanted our team to win. And honestly, as soon as the ball went the other way, I wanted to get back and defend, and then just wanted to get the ball and run up and take the glory and score a goal. And I was naturally really fit, so I could just keep going. I had a good engine.
Yeah.
And I was
Did you consider it?
right-footed. I did, but there came to a point where I must have been about 12, 13, and I had to choose cricket or football. And there was just something that swayed me towards cricket. I think it was the people. The people were way nicer. I enjoyed being around cricket people, whereas football, I was a bit scared of the football people.
More aggressive, more
aggressive. I don't know. I think I remember going to a couple of training sessions, and I was a bit scared of the players. I think they were a bit older than me, and they just weren't very friendly.
Yeah.
Whereas cricket, everyone was just so nice, friendly, and I don't know, I had a nice family feel about it. And like, you know what it's like, you'd play cricket for a few hours, you'd play your game, and then you'd hang out at the club. All our parents would be sat drinking, having a chat, while all the kids would be out playing. What's that game called where you run around the field? What's it called? British Bulldog. Used to play
games.
Shit.
Yeah, that does take me back.
Like all those types of games. And then, yeah, I just loved the feeling of hitting the ball as well. I just loved smacking it or trying to. Back at that age, I couldn't really get off the square.
Yeah, right.
And yeah, I just played towards cricket.
Who was a big coach for you then, early on? Who was a big inspiration for you?
Early on, so my older brother Ryan was the one that said, "Come down and play this game of cricket." I was like, okay then. So he played for Whitmore Cricket Club.
Yeah.
Which is the club still at now in Newcastle under Lyme. So Ryan was like, just come and have a go with us. So I went up to the nets at Whitmore, had a bowl. And I was naturally a good bowler. And the coach back then was a guy called A.D. Hickin. Unfortunately, I've not seen him for years. I don't even know where he lives right now. But if he sees this interview, then great. So A.D. Hickin back then was the Whitmore coach, and he was really good to me and was giving me so many opportunities. He was like, come and play on Monday. You're really good. I reckon you've got this. So I just remember him making me feel so welcome and making me feel like one of the boys. Like, I don't remember any feeling of, you know, being a girl and feeling left out or feeling like I couldn't do it because I was a girl.
So there was no suggestion of a girls' team, right? You played with the boys, and that was that. Yeah.
Yeah, there was literally no other girls in the area apart from one called Frankie. We were like the only girls in the county that played cricket. And then there was Georgia Alwys that played in Wolverhampton.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, there was no girls teams, definitely not back then. So it's changed a lot since.
Yeah, no doubt.
So there
No
was
doubt.
coaches, there was Adi Hickin, and then after about a few months of playing, we got introduced to this guy called Dave Ferris, who was a really good coach. He did a bit with the England women's team around that time as well. So I used to have one-to-one coaching with him once a week, and then I think I must have had him for about 4 years. So a lot goes down to Dave Ferris and another coach called Andy Grice, who he had a normal job and he used to drop his job and just come down and travel to Stoke to coach me for an hour if I needed him.
Right. Wow.
So yeah, there's been a few coaches around that time.
Before we got onto the England bit and the here and now, I want to know a bit more about what you were like as a kid. Right. What did you enjoy school? Did you get in a straight?
Not really.
Were you a naughty child, Danni?
I might have been a little bit disruptive compared to normal child in class, but I think it's because I just wanted to be out and about playing sport. The thought of sitting still just wasn't in my DNA, I guess.
Yeah, okay.
But I loved maths.
Okay.
Absolutely loved maths and working things out in my head. And then obviously you get that with cricket, don't you, working out score.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's why I loved maths.
Yeah, there's a correlation there though, definitely. Because cricket's about solving problems, isn't it? It's about being presented with situations really well and equations.
Yeah, I got a B in GCSE maths, which was really good.
Right.
And I passed all the others just about. But for me, like, none of my family went to uni. Like, my family have always brought us up to go to school and get straight into work and earn some pennies. So for me, I never.
Do then? So what did you do at what? It would have been what, 16, 17?
So don't laugh, but I went to St. Beat's High School, and then year 11 started getting a job. I think I was 15, 16. Got my first job at a Chinese buffet restaurant.
Brilliant.
In Stoke. And I started with like Friday and Saturday nights, walking around, picking up people's plates. At a Chinese buffet restaurant in Stoke. And I absolutely loved it. Like, I used to write down every night of work, making sure I got paid right. I was like, I need that money.
Yeah.
And then did a few weeks at the local Bangladeshi restaurant at the bottom of our road, which we still go to like most times I'm home. The Belash, everyone loves the Belash.
Do they remember you from when you were a kid?
Yeah. They've got one of my shirts on the wall.
Brilliant.
When I was away, Dad didn't even ask me, just took down my Ashes shirt with my Ashes medal framed, and it's currently on the wall at the Belash. I went in one night and I was like, Dad, what's my Ashes shirt and medal doing on the wall in Belash?
Look, I'm all for, like, you know, some T20 game, stick your shirt on the wall. An Ashes shirt. You've got to ask your permission.
I know. I was like, Dad, but yeah, talk to what it's been. It's stayed there for a few years now. No one stole it, but
that's brilliant.
So I was at the Chinese buffet place.
And then all the time you're playing as much cricket as you can, but obviously not really making any money from it, right? So
yeah, so at this
that's
point,
a tough balancing
I'm still young. Right? I was trying to do A levels at sixth form. I knew I wasn't really gonna do very well, so really wasn't bothered about how I did. I just wanted to earn some money here and there and keep playing cricket, keep enjoying it. I didn't even think I could make a living out of playing cricket if I played for England at this point. So it never really crossed my mind. I just wanted to live each day, enjoy everything I was doing. I didn't really put too much pressure on myself. Like, my mum and dad will literally just do whatever you want, whatever makes you happy. It wasn't posh at all.
That's all for this week's pod. Cheers, Ben, and thanks to both Lauren and Danny. We'll be back next week when the winners of the 100 will have been decided. The Metro Bank Girls in Cricket Fund Championing the Future Hub is now live on iCoach Cricket. The hub contains a host of resources for volunteers and coaches dedicated to supporting coaching girls, with topics such as transitioning from softball to hardball and how to create a welcoming environment. Create your login and check out the resources on iCoach Cricket, or find out more about the fund at metrobankonline.co.uk/cricket.